Assassin's Creed Origins is a special game within the Assassin's Creed franchise. It's unlike any other game because it portrays a time and period barely covered by any other video game. It also changed a lot of the franchise core concepts and started a new era of Assassin's Creed games. Games that are among the most incredible I have ever seen or experienced.
Skilled assassins, trained for generations in the deadly art.
Will you stand alone before the fury of his army? Yes.
The atmosphere is where this game shines the most. It's visually incredible and one of the most beautiful games ever made. Egypt feels so mystical and magical, and Origins manages to perfectly portray these aspects. Despite the game being mostly grounded, it does feature a lot of mythological concepts, references, and has an overall mystical vibe. You can feel it everywhere, but exploring tombs and hidden passages even gave me a slightly creepy feeling. They are dark, without light, and you can't see anything. You have no idea where they will lead you or what lies ahead. Often it's so dark that without a torch you won't even be able to see your own body, and even with a torch, the light will still barely illuminate your way.
Are we going into battle?
There's something out there.
Exploring these dark tombs and passages is amazing and makes you feel like an actual explorer or raider, but it also gives you a feeling of being watched. You honestly get the impression that something dark might be hiding there, some creature or demon that is waiting for you. It even seems like the mummies will come back to life and try to drag you to the underworld. More so, the sound design down there is fantastic and it gives me shivers anytime I hear it. But all of that is just a small part of what makes the atmosphere of this game so great. It's unfortunate that there are very few games set in ancient Egypt. It's a mystery to me why that is, considering the wealth of possibilities it offers as a setting, be it historically, mythologically, or even in fantasy. We get so many games, movies, TV shows, or books set in the Viking era, medieval times, or medieval-inspired fantasy. But ancient Egypt and the ancient period in general seems to be mostly absent, with a few exceptions such as the legendary TV show Rome from HBO. But then again, that one mostly focused on Rome, and the Egyptian part was heavily cut and simplified, even though it interestingly enough plays in the same time frame as Assassin's Creed Origins.
The Consul of Rome!
Vassal? I am no vassal. I am king.
Sit down!
Origins doesn't even take place during the heyday of ancient Egypt. In fact, you can make the argument that ancient Egypt, as in the ancient Egyptian empire that first comes to mind when thinking of that period, doesn't exist anymore. The game is set during the rule of Cleopatra and the Ptolemaic dynasty, 300 years after the last native Egyptians ruled the area. While I personally would have preferred to see that specific era, I can understand why Ubisoft chose Cleopatra's time, as there were a lot of events happening, and it also gave them the opportunity to include Alexandria and the Greeks and Romans. Speaking about Alexandria, the city is not only incredibly gorgeous and a feast for the eyes, but it's also Ubisoft at their best. They have a special talent for creating amazing locations and bringing these time periods back to life. There are a lot of things you can criticize Ubisoft for, such as awful business practices, but when it comes to their open world design, they are among the best developers out there. The visuals, the attention to details, and overall presentation is always on point and incredible. This goes so far that I was recently exploring Memphis, and aside from the city in general looking great and feeling like absolute candy to look at, a lot of the smaller details caught my eye. For example, models of old fountains. One of them was really well designed with intricate details, but also supposed to be made from marble stone. And it caught my attention because of how realistic it looked and how all of these details were clearly carefully researched, placed, and designed. It looked authentic and like something you'd expect to see in that area and time period. I know that most players don't really pay attention to these things and probably don't care, but in my opinion, these things are a major reason for why Origins and Assassin's Creed games in general work so well and are so unique and special. I never really cared about the story or gameplay of any AC game. When I buy an Assassin's Creed game, I do it only because I'm interested in the setting and time period it takes place in. Origins was a no-brainer because there simply is no other game that lets you explore ancient Egypt in such a detailed and intimate way. No other game lets you experience this time period the way this game does. That's of course not to say that the gameplay is bad here. It's not. The fighting especially feels very fluid and intuitive, and it scratched my itch for wanting to roleplay the Scorpion King. One of the reasons why the game is so immersive, in my opinion, is the lighting system. I feel like in Origins and Odyssey, the light plays a major role in how you will feel while playing and how you experience and see the world. It might even be one of the biggest reasons for why the atmosphere in this game is so good. Because the light here is unique within the franchise and something that also brings me back to the game's mythological aspect. The game itself is not mythological in the classic sense, even though AC games in general are heavily science fiction and fantasy based, if we're being honest. None of these games are really historically accurate, and if I want to learn something about the period, there's much better sources than Assassin's Creed with its ancient alien storyline.
Is it dead or alive? Human or inhuman? You'll know. You'll see. You'll feel the awful, creeping, crawling terror that stands your hair on end and brings a scream to your lips.
However, mythology does play a large role in this game, and this can be felt in the way the sky and night illuminates the world. Even when it gets cloudy or rainy, it all has an atmosphere of being larger than life, legendary, as if the gods are actually watching your every move and action. When it gets dark and cloudy, or when a sandstorm crosses your path, it feels like destiny is calling, or like some outside force is trying to influence the events unfolding on Earth. This is coupled with a lot of the details you can see on buildings or ancient tombs where you can find massive statues in honor of the gods, pharaohs, or serving as guardians, and also large drawings of legendary heroes and journeys. And there is something otherworldly and different about them. You can really feel their presence in a strange way. I suppose it's due to them being larger than life and just massive, coupled with the lighting system giving off this mythological vibe and atmosphere. The game is heavily rooted in mythology, and even the classic ancient alien storyline here is tied to the Egyptian mythology, and you can feel it and see it everywhere. I personally love that the last few AC games incorporated these mythological elements and even fully embraced them in their DLCs. I know that some people in the community claim that this is too much of a departure from history or historical accuracy, but these games have always been fantasy games. They have been inspired by history, but were always supposed to be historical fiction, except they also had heavy sci-fi elements since the very first game. In Origins, and feels like the gods are present all the time. I'm not just talking about the quests that literally feature mythological events, but also just how the world is designed in general. When you explore temples or bigger Egyptian cities here, the buildings are full of Egyptian drawings and art depicting the gods, the underworld, heroes, and the soul's journey through the land of the dead. One of my favorite things to do is just walk around these temples, be it old or still functioning ones, and look at all the art and find details presented here. The developers clearly did their research, and I can't help but have immense respect for them for the incredible work they did here. You should try turning off the music and simply walk around the world, looking at various objects and listening to the great sound design here, because just like in Odyssey, there is something really relaxing about Bayek's sandals just hitting various surfaces such as stone, marble, or sand while the wind is blowing and you can hear palms moving. The sound design here is fantastic and even has certain ASMR qualities to it. It's just so satisfying to hear, and coupled with the world design, you get a feeling of virtual tourism.
Anubis is my bearer, for he who lulls me to rest is the god in lion form. The god saves me. I am he who comes forth as one who breaks through the door.
The game has so many cool details, but one that always sticks out to me is how you can almost feel the heat and hot weather of Egypt. You can see it looking into the distance, but even when exploring the desert, it feels hot and almost makes you thirsty. This because of the great lighting system at play here, but also because the developers went the extra mile. For example, when you're in the desert far from civilization or any water, after a while you can see illusions playing tricks on your mind, just like in real life. Clearly Seth, the desert god, is trying to break your will here. The game didn't have to include these things, but by doing so anyway, they added to the atmosphere and the realism. These things are immersive and they make you feel like you're actually there, but more importantly, they help bring this time period back to life.
Oh, you doorkeepers who guard your portals, who swallow souls and who gulp down the corpses of the dead. Shadow. That is the Soul Eater.